Homemade bread that lasts longer, a week, 10 days, or even longer depending on your climate and the temperature in your home. To achieve this goal, we're turning back the clock to an old-fashioned method used in bread making. We combine the yeast, the liquid, and half the flour the night before in a mixture called a sponge. Essentially what sponging does is it allows for better fermentation of the dough. This means lighter, fluffier bread and more complex flavors. This technique really allows breads made with whole grain flours like whole wheat to shine. Your bread will be more digestible because it's more fermented, and it will last longer in a cool cupboard. If you have shied away from the commitment of a sourdough starter, this method might be for you. And even if you enjoy baking with sourdough, this might also be for you. Today's recipe is found at my website, chocolateboxcottage.tv. It is printable, and remember there's a button you can toggle between US standard measurements and metric measurements. Hi, I'm Michelle, and I'm here to help you create your slice of country living wherever you live. Welcome to Chocolate Box Cottage, the sweet spot between old-fashioned skills and modern convenience. Today we're making potato sponge bread using the old-fashioned method of sponging bread dough. And this recipe utilizes an ingredient that is often thrown away: potato water. That's the liquid that's left over from boiling potatoes when you make mashed potatoes. Did you know how good it is in bread? The sponging method in bread making is bread making gold. It is such a wonderful technique that adds lightness and fluffiness and flavor to your bread. Well, when you add potato water to that, it improves it even further. Yeast loves the starches that are present in potato water, so don't throw out that potato water. Save it for your bread. Well, last night I made a batch of mashed potatoes for dinner, and instead of pouring that liquid down the drain, as is so often done, I reserved it in a measuring cup, about 3 cups. And if you don't have enough potato water, you can just add a little extra water to top it off. And you can actually replace it entirely with plain water if you prefer. But anyway, I put the potato water directly in the mixing bowl. And then I added the yeast, 2 teaspoons of yeast, and half the flour. So I used 3 cups of freshly ground whole wheat flour. You can also use bread flour or all-purpose flour. It's your choice. I also added 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar to improve breakdown of phytic acid present in the whole grain flour. Combine these ingredients in the mixing bowl using the flat paddle beater. You'll want to let this sit overnight on the kitchen counter at room temperature covered. You can use a plate, you can use plastic wrap, or if you happen to have a 6-quart, 6-liter Cambro container, the lid perfectly fits the KitchenAid mixer bowl. This is what it looks like the next day. It has risen, turned very bubbly, and you can see from the markings inside the bowl that it has started to drop down again. So you can leave it in the bowl overnight or up to about 24 hours and it will be just fine. You'll want to smell it. It has a wonderful yeasty smell. It's happily bubbling away, and the flour has begun to be digested, and we're going to have some really good tasting bread. So our next step is to add the bowl to the mixer, and we'll use the flat paddle beater. The next day, add a 1/4 cup of olive oil or melted butter or liquid fat of your choice, a teaspoon of salt, and a 1/4 cup of white or brown sugar or honey, 2 to 4 tablespoons. Turn the mixer on low speed and gradually add the flour. You'll use between 3 to 4 cups all-purpose or whole wheat flour. Add the flour more gradually as you get closer to the end. And keep it on low speed. When the dough starts to clean the sides of the bowl, that's our cue that lets us know we've added enough flour. So raise the head and scrape the beater. Scrape down the sides of the bowl with a rubber spatula. Before you add the dough hook, take a little soft butter on your hands and rub it on the collar of the dough hook, both the top and the bottom side. This will keep the dough from climbing up the hook and wandering into places it doesn't belong. Now we're going to let the mixer do the kneading for us. Lock the head to stabilize the machine and then turn it on low. You always want to knead on low speed with your KitchenAid mixer. This provides the gentlest type of kneading that more closely resembles hand kneading. We don't want to work the dough too hard. We want it to be handled gently to build strength and resilience in the dough. As it kneads, keep an eye on the dough, and you can continue to add little bits of flour just with a spoon or a measuring spoon instead of a measuring cup. This will help keep you from adding too much flour. Let the mixer knead for 6 to 8 minutes until the dough is smooth and bouncy. Turn the mixer off and check on the dough. Reach right in the bowl and touch the dough. It should feel tacky without being overly sticky. As we can see, this is still sticky, so we need to let it knead a little bit longer and probably add just a touch more flour. Okay, it's had another minute to knead and just a touch more flour, maybe a tablespoon and a half more flour. And I have not used quite all of the flour that's called for in the recipe. And that's fine. What you're looking for is how the dough feels. So I'm going to reach in there and touch it, and it feels like it should. It feels tacky. And something you can compare this to is a Post-it note. Touch the tacky side of a Post-it note and then touch the dough. It should feel similar. Doughs made with whole grain flour like whole wheat will retain a certain amount of stickiness. This is okay and does not need to be eliminated. Now we can remove the dough hook, and we're going to give the dough a 5-minute rest before we do the Windowpane test. When the 5 minutes is up, we can uncover it, and I'm going to grease just the tips of my fingers before I touch the dough. Pull up a walnut-sized piece of dough and pull and stretch it and rotate it. Keep turning and see if you can form a thin membrane. Hold this up to a window, and if you can see light through it without it breaking, then you know you have sufficiently kneaded your dough. I oiled a generous circle here with about a tablespoon of olive oil and poured the dough out onto the surface. And now I'm going to take a little bit of that oil on my hands, and we're going to give the dough a few turns by hand. This will help bring the dough together into a nice mass and give it better structure. Just takes a few turns, maybe 8 or 10. There we go. We've got a nice, smooth, beautiful ball of dough. At this stage, you want to clean your mixing bowl. Rub about a tablespoon or generous tablespoon of butter all over the inside of the bowl. Take the dough and put it smooth side up in the bowl, and then cover it with the lid. Now we'll let this rise until it is doubled. That will take between 45 minutes to an hour. The timer dinged. It's time to check on our dough, and I'm pretty sure it's done. It has risen almost like a balloon. So we're going to use the poke test for good practice, just to make sure. So take 2 fingers and gently touch the dough. If the indentation remains, you know that the dough is sufficiently risen. If the dough pushes back to you, then you know that it needs just a little bit more time to rise. And if the dough sighs and collapses, you know you let it go a little too long. I have a greased area here on the table. Just spread a little olive oil on it, and I'm turning the dough out onto that surface, and then use your palms to flatten the dough out. Instead of punching it, which might tear the dough, it's a better idea to just gently flatten it and release all the big air bubbles. Now take a dough card or bench knife or just a large knife and divide the dough in half. Now move one half out of the way and we'll shape a loaf. First I'll pat it into a rough rectangle and fold it like a letter in thirds. And then I'll pat it out again into a rectangle and then roll it up like a jelly roll. Tuck those edges under, and if you see anything poking out of the end, just work that in until you have a nice tight loaf shape, and then set the dough into the loaf pan. I brought you in a little closer so you could see the shaping of the second loaf. Now remember, as we flip the dough out onto the table, the smooth side of the dough is on the bottom. So it is still on the bottom, and that's the part that's going to be the top of our loaf. We want to preserve that smooth side to make the top crust of our loaf. Okay, so I folded it in thirds, and I'm patting it out into a rectangle again. You can use your pan as a guide to decide how wide to pat it out so that it will fit, and then roll it up. And if it starts to stick a little bit, you can use your dough scraper or your bench knife to just gently release that dough from the counter. Okay. Now I am tucking in the part here on the end that wants to pooch out and giving it just a few more tucks to tighten it up, increase the surface tension. That'll give us a nice rise on our loaf. We've settled it into a bread pan. Got two beautiful loaves here, and I'm going to cover them, and we'll give them a second rise, lightly covered with a clean tea towel. Since this is the second rise, it's going to go more quickly than the first rise did. So I'll be back to check these in about 25 to 30 minutes. Meanwhile, I preheated the oven to 350 degrees, which is about 175 Celsius, and our loaves rose beautifully. In order to check, you can just do what I call the touch test. So take a finger and just gently touch the dough, and if it leaves an impression, then you know it's ready to bake. And these are ready to bake. Let's get them in the oven. We'll come back in about half an hour and we'll find some beautiful golden brown loaves. They look and smell beautiful. Tip a loaf out of the pan and inspect the bottom crust. It should be browned all over, and this one is. So we know that's done baking, and check the other loaf as well. Another way to test for doneness is to use a food thermometer. Insert the probe in the bottom of the loaf and check the temperature. It should read between 195 to 200 Fahrenheit or 90 to 93 Celsius. Let's go put these on a cooling rack. If you like a soft crust on your bread, consider brushing softened butter over the top crust while the bread is still hot. It will soak right into that crust and keep it soft, and of course add a little extra buttery goodness to the flavor. Well, they turned out beautiful, and I can hardly wait for them to cool so I can cut into a loaf and show you. Well, the bread has had some time to cool, and I thought we'd like to take a look and see what it looks like inside. Here we go. Isn't this lovely? It's got a nice, soft, pillowy crumb. It smells amazing. It's half whole wheat, so it's delicious and it's nutritious. A great use of leftover potato water. You know, holidays that call for mashed potatoes like Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter, instead of pouring that potato water down the drain, set it aside and just mix up a quick bread sponge that evening, and then the next day you can put together some bread and get it in the oven and have homemade bread for your sandwiches the next day. It's a wonderful thing. Thanks for joining me here today at Chocolate Box Cottage. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.